Beautiful. And welcome to Creating 2019. We have been interviewing amazing women, leaders of leaders who are on a mission to really leave their magic on this planet. And I am so excited to introduce to you someone who, in such short time, has really impacted my understanding of what it is to be in this conversation of self-realization. um, Dr. Aziz Fuqua, and we went to Ghana together, and I got a little bit of her magic there. And recently I attended one of her Circle of Light circles, which was just, it blew my world. Um, Thank you so much for saying yes. Thank you for being here, for making the time.
Absolutely. It is my complete and total pleasure. You are such a delight, Michelle. And it's my pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. Now, I would love my audience to hear directly from you who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
Wow. Who am I?
It's a loaded question right there.
Yeah, no, I don't know if we can do that, who I am. I am a transformational technologist. I'm an Egyptologist. I've been teaching A Course in Miracles and Egyptian mysticism now for over 30 years. And I am a proponent of universal law. I am really interested. My books are about mastering the game of life. And I come from the point of view that life indeed is a game with rules and laws that have to be followed in order for you to be successful in the playing of it. And so leads me into, of course, the rules in this game are the universal laws: mentalism, correspondence, vibration, consequences, rhythm, gender, and polarity. So these are the 7 laws that govern the whole playing of the game of life, that sustain this whole system that we are evolving under, if you will. And so my main objective is to make sure that anybody that I work with is really conversant with the laws and are applying the laws. So now, if we want to look at those laws, and I don't know if you want to do that. Would you like to look at those laws?
I would love that, because yes, let's do that.
Okay, well, the first one, of course, is mentalism. And we know that everything begins with thought. You can't get up to go to the kitchen without first thinking about it. You can't do anything in this game without first thinking. So the law of mentalism, of course, is number 1. It says that everything is mind, and that we indeed are the thinkers that then create our world. So our thoughts then are seeds that go into the quantum field and clothe themselves, if you will. So everyone's heard thoughts become things, and how thoughts indeed do become things is through the materializing of, or the bursting forth of the seed, which is the thought that goes into the quantum field and comes out whatever you're thinking about. So if you want to know what you're thinking, all you have to do is look at your results. Your results will always tell you what your thoughts are about money, about love, about health, about whatever it is that you're surrounded with, if you will. So if you want to know what you're thinking, you can't go by what you think you're thinking. You have to go by your results. And then your results will say, if you have a thought that there's never enough money, that is the only way you can end up with not enough money, is to have a thought, to be holding a thought that equals that. So if you change that thought, I mean, you have to change it without evidence. And that's the tough part for most people. It's like, but I really don't have any money. And if you don't know the power of the law of mentalism, then you'll think that that's somehow an outside of you thing. I don't have enough money because there's not enough money out there, or I don't have the skills to make enough money, or something about other than your thoughts. We know that if you held just the thought that I, as the image and likeness of God, am pure abundance, I am actually the money. So I always have enough because I always have enough thought. And thought then turns out to be the currency, the true currency, not these paper strips or metal discs. What the true currency is your thought. And if you were to hold a thought that says, I always have enough, or always have more than enough, or always have an abundance, then that is the only thing that you could end up with, because that thought indeed does go into the quantum field. And at the end of the day, it must replicate your thought. Just as a seed of a strawberry has to make a strawberry, the seed of whatever you're thinking has to make the result. So, again, if you want to know what you're thinking, it's not a mystery. Look around you. You don't have enough money, you have a thought that says there's not enough money. You don't have enough health, there's a thought that says you don't have enough health. If you want to change your experience, you must change your thought.
So good.
That's number one, of course. And number two says, as above, so below, as below, so above, which means that there is nothing but the original thought that created everything. And that creative thought is downloaded into us and extended. But it's unconditional in that it doesn't matter what we think, it is going to correspond with the thought, the powerful thought in the beginning of any action, let there be. Okay, then we move to the next one, which is consequences. Very, very important. You've heard 1,000 times, what goes around comes around.
Yep.
You've heard that every action produces an equal and opposite reaction, equal in intensity and opposite in direction. So that everything that leaves my mind comes back to me as a manifestation of my thought. We've heard ever since we were children, do unto others only that you would have others do unto you, because everything that goes around will indeed come around. Mm-hmm. And then you go to the law of vibration, which is number 4. And number 4 will tell you that your level of consciousness or your vibration will determine what you attract, because only things of the same vibration can coexist. Again, which then leads us into the law of polarity that basically says that light has to stay light and dark has to stay dark, and they cannot occupy the same space. So, which then leads us to the next 2, which are rhythm and gender. And of course, rhythm just means the day has to follow night, night has to follow day. Up has to follow down, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is very important when we think about communication and cooperation. Gender just states that everything in creation or everything that is manifested has to have both masculine and feminine principles. And our objective in self-realization is to make sure that that's understood, so that we can cooperate and start loving each other instead of, fighting and disagreeing because we have such opposite ways of being. So that's a quick run through of the 7 laws.
I love that. Could we define what self-realization is for people that have never probably heard of the word or are still in?
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely. So to realize yourself, to realize everything, not just yourself, but to realize that everything is a replica, if you will, of the original thought. And we're going to say, people call that original thought a lot of things, but the main, I don't want to think about this as a God thing, but it is a vibration thing. It is the vibration of Ah, or alpha, or the aleph. It is the vibration of Ah that starts movement. The Om starts movement. The sound actually starts moving, and there are ways that you can learn about that even on YouTube. But self-realization is to get to the point where you realize that you are a stream of creator, if you will. You are now clear that the power that starts everything is downloaded into you, and that you have to take full responsibility for creating in your own life. And when you get to the point where you know that you are the image and likeness of that original thought, it says in the Bible, it says, in the beginning was the Word was with God. No, the Word was God. So if you think about that, the Word is just sounded thought. And thought, again, according to our law of mentalism, starts everything. And you can't separate a result from the thought. And so self-realization is a point where you understand that, where you truly understand that you are the creator in your own cosmic universe, that everything in your environment, in your auric field, is drawn to you based on your thinking. And when you get that, there's no more blame, there's no more guilt, there's no more hatred, actually, because you really come to an understanding of yourself as creator. And so there's no other in that process. So it's self-realization is about accepting the oneness of all things, understanding that we indeed are all emanating divinity, and whatever that means to each person. That is basically an encapsulation of self-realization, just an awareness of yourself as creator.
I love that. Now, I want to touch on something, Dr. Aziz, that comes up where, people, this is what I kind of call out with my clients, like, oh, you're busy playing God in your bubble, where we start thinking that we are the ego starts running its own show.
There's a problem. There's a problem. With self-realization, you realize that you are spirit, image and likeness of the divine in a vehicle. And the vehicle is associated with the ego. So when you don't understand, when you're not in self-realization mode, if you will identify yourself as the ego. And that is what you're speaking about. When people think that they are an ego and they think the ego is determining their reality, there's where the breakdown is. In order to really understand this process, you have to align yourself with the light, with the love, with the energy that is divine, which is high frequency. Because if you start identifying as an ego, you're going to be sorely disappointed in your results, because the ego, according to what we know from Egyptian mysticism, is considered completely impotent, empty. As a matter of fact, it's where we get the word sin from. Sin is a Latin word that means without. And what it is that we're without is light, is without love, without being, actually. So the ego is a point of identification, but without the spirit, it's like a car sitting in a garage. It's like a car that's self-driven that keeps running into things and breaking down. And so the danger, that's exactly what self-realization is. It's realizing that you are spirit having a physical experience, that you are aligned with true thought, and that the ego is just a way for you to move around, like a spacesuit, for you to move around in the earth plane and be identifiable. So Joe has a brown one, and Mike has a white one, and Paul has a yellow one, and this one is a 1949, and this one is a 1985. These are vehicle descriptions, and that's what the ego is. The ego is a vehicular, if you will, identification. It is not a driver's identification. So if you identify yourself with the vehicle and not the driver, you are going to run into some serious problems. So yes.
This is so good. And I want to also touch on forgiveness. I said this is such a huge, for me, it's been a huge practice in unraveling. And when I got to radical forgiveness, the understanding that there's nothing to forgive, was when I found deep peace in my soul. Could we talk about that? Because you break it down so beautifully, and I've quoted you since the Circle of Light, and people are just like, wow, Can you break that down for us?
But the first thing that we have to understand about forgiveness is that the word itself will lead us to a true understanding of it. We can't give forth something from someone else's consciousness. We can only give forth from our own consciousness. So when we understand that when we attract something, based on universal law again, what goes around comes around. When we attract something, we're attracting it on the come around. But as it comes around, it informs us that it had to first go around. If we want something to stop, we have to give it forth from our consciousness, because if we don't give it forth, we keep attracting it. Mm-hmm. We keep attracting. So if I am carrying an energy of having stolen anything, even if it was just an extra movie when I paid for only one, mm-hmm. and I went into a movie theater, I'm still registering in universal consciousness as a thief. And until I forgive the thief inside of me, I'm always going to be vulnerable to attracting a thief into my auric field. Forgiveness then is a way to, a big way to self-realization, in that as I take each of these things that are coming to me out of my consciousness, they no longer have the magnetic attraction that they do when I'm still holding guilt for them. So forgiveness then is a way for me to clean up my consciousness, not for me to clean up somebody else's consciousness. So we've been taught that I have to forgive the thief who stole from me, but we haven't been taught that I have to forgive the thief inside of me that's attracting the thief that stole from me.
Oh, good. This is so good. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. So that's it. Basically, self-realization is about cleaning up. It's about cleaning up my consciousness. So I start off, if you will, I've explained this really thoroughly in my books. And you can find the books.
Please, yeah.
On circlesoflight.net, the website www.circlesoflight.net.
And we'll put that in the comments as well.
Yeah, because it's more than I can explain in a few minutes. It's the idea of forgiveness really is cleaning up my own consciousness. That's the bottom line there. It is not who I'm pointing at, it's what I'm pointing with. That is what needs to be dealt with. And I know what I am harboring in my consciousness, again, based on what is being attracted into my auric field. So if there are abusers or liars or thieves coming into my space, it puts me on notice that these things have to come out of my consciousness as magnets. And then what's left is just light. And then I will attract only light into my auric field. Only that is satisfying once I clean up everything that's disturbing.
I love this. Now, for our analytical people that may be watching, do you have like 1 to 2, 3 steps in people moving through that forgiveness process?
Well, the first thing I say is that the only thing that can come into your auric field, and this is very important, it's scientific, the only thing that can come into your auric field is what you're holding in your consciousness. And usually you're holding it as guilt. So then the guilt is projected out into the far and wide and magnetically pulling to you what you're holding guilt for. So now this is very important because when, Course in Miracles says that your brother is your salvation. And what it means is that your brother coming into your auric field will tell you what you're holding in your consciousness. And once you identify what you're holding in your consciousness, you don't blame and point, you actually forgive. You actually go inside and say, I don't remember where I stole. I don't remember where I abused. I don't know where I lied, because I'm not doing that now. But somewhere I must have, because the only thing that can come into my auric field is what went from it. The only thing that can come around is what went around. And so if I don't want to take responsibility for what I'm attracting, I won't be able to execute this process, because I'm still wanting to say, you did it, rather than I must have done it if this is what's coming into my auric field. This is very, very important. And as I said, I explained that much more clearly and in depth in the books.
I got her books and they are a total game changer, especially for people that really want to understand this conversation of self-realization and consciousness, forgiveness. There's so many distinctions that Dr. C's really breaks down. And what I love about you is the how practical you make it, right? Because I tend to stay too woo-woo for people and go over their head, but you really ground down these distinctions where it's so easy to apply. You look forward to forgiving. You look forward to giving it forth because now you understand what it's really about on a scientific, on a spiritual level. It's super powerful.
Your self-realization is about cleaning out. You come into an incarnation and you want to purify your four lower bodies. You just want to scrub them from any debris, any guilt, anything that's because, and why you want to do this is because those thoughts that are being held there are, as I said, magnetic, and they're actually attracting to you all the things you're wondering, how did this get here? How did that get here? It's just magnetized, and it's very scientific. All you have to do is remove the magnet and your whole life transforms to what's there after they're removed. So what's there after they're removed is pure light, because in the beginning, in the garden, metaphorically, there was light. And then we fell into the without light, what they call the dark, what they call sin, which was never meant to imply that you were bad, just that you had stepped away from the light and that you were in now a realm without light. And so your objective with self-realization is to walk yourself back from that dark place back into the light. And that can only be facilitated with forgiveness, with you taking out that is unloving. It's the same thing with the word evil. Okay, we just described the word sin, but evil is just the opposite. If you look at the word EVIL, is just the opposite of LIVE. So it really is just a polarity conversation. If eternal life is on one end of the pole, then the opposite, EVIL, is just the opposite of LIVE. And it's just describing two sides of one coin called existence. And we've come up with all this bad and wrong business, and it makes it difficult to even want to step on the path of self-realization, because you think you're starting off as bad and wrong, and you're just really starting off in I don't know, and I choose to know. And that step by step is what results in self-realization.
I love this. Now I'm going to ask you one more question, and we're going to move into the last question that I ask all my speakers. You said something that, again, blew my world. The metaphysical meaning behind what Jesus meant by turn the other cheek. Can you break that down for us?
Certainly. It's in modern days, it's in A Course in Miracles. It just simply means change your perception. It means no more than change your perception. If you're looking in the pole, the law of polarity, in Egyptian mysticism, we're taught that spirit is on the left, and that's just because of the way the brain functions. The right brain operates the left side of the body, and the right brain belongs to intuition, to inspiration. It belongs to God. So the right brain operates the left side of the body. So we use the left end of the pole to signify the position of spirit. And we use the right end of the pole to signify the position of the ego. It says in the Bible that if what you're looking at offends you, turn the other cheek. Basically, you're looking at something that's unpleasant as an ego, and you're being asked to look at the truth that everything is God, or whatever name you choose to call it. If you turn and look at it the way, let's just say the way Jesus would look at it, the way any of your spiritual leaders would look at it, the way Buddha would look at it, when you're just turning from one point of view to another. You're changing your perception from empty or EVIL or SIN to full, to LIVE, to eternal life. And that really is all there is to that. When you're being offended, it says, if your right eye offends you, pluck it out. It just means if what you're seeing when you turn to the right will always be offensive, but your objective is to turn the other cheek, look the other way and look at the truth. Look at the full end and not at the empty end.
I love that. I love that. When you said it, it really landed for me the first time, where it's like, don't get hooked by it. Just really change, move your focus and your attention to what you want, to the life, to what you want to experience. That was so powerful. And it really has helped me shift my perspective in the whole turn the other cheek. Because I would be like, no, I'm not going to turn the other cheek and get slapped. I'm not a martyr. I'm not Jesus, right? But it really is about changing our perspective and not getting hooked on it.
That's
so
right.
Don't become what we judge.
That's right.
So my last question, Dr. Aziz, and again, I want to thank you so much. Before we get into that question, where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? I know that you have a mystery school called Circles of Light that is super powerful, and it really brings the Egyptian mysticism and A Course in Miracle. And you have such vast experience, wisdom, and knowledge in this. Where can people find you?
Well, www.circlesoflight.net or acimegypt.com. acimegypt.com. We do a daily podcast. We do webinars. We do circles. We do trips. We're a traveling ministry. We're a musical traveling ministry. So we basically travel the world singing, and we invite people to join us and journey with us on this path to self-realization. So you can start with circlesoflight.net and then see what we're doing. We're traveling constantly, and we're going to Egypt on March 10th, and we're going to Kenya for safari on March 23rd. Yeah. And then we're going on a Greek cruise on June 9th. So basically, finding me on the web is one thing, but finding me in the world is another thing. And I think that after you find me on the web, you're going to want to join me someplace out in the worldwide world.
I know I can't make the March one, but I am definitely catching you in Egypt because it's so calling me. So my last question, Dr. Aziz, is what are your 2 to 3 tips on creating an epic year, an amazing year?
Well, depends on, I guess, where you are on your path. Really, for us here at Circles of Light, 2019 is the year of fun. 2018 was the year for presencing the superhero. So we noticed that all these Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman, and Aquaman, and this man and that man came out heavily last year. And when we were in Egypt, we discovered that those same superheroes are on the temple walls. And then we looked deeper and discovered that those superheroes are not external to us, they're internal. So then we got busy presencing or pulling out each of those superheroes as needed for whatever task that came in front of us. One part of ourselves was able to handle it powerfully and succinctly. So then this year we moved into fun. What is it, Philip? Feeling uplifted now.
I love that.
Uplifted now.
Feeling uplifted now. Fun.
Yes, and we have what? We have love equals fun. That's our motto for this year. Love equals fun. And the love is lawful observation vivaciously expressed equals feeling uplifted now.
So good.
Okay. So but the only thing is, and I said this earlier, it depends on where you are on the path of self-realization, because I don't think it's possible to have fun if you're not in relationship with your higher self. If you're still focused on ego behavior, on ego obtaining or whatever it is, I don't think it's possible to have fun because you have too much agenda that ends up being unfulfilled because the ego has to stay impotent. So when you have a long list of agenda, you're going to constantly be disappointed and constantly searching and looking for results that may not be important to your higher self. Right. So I think it's really important in order to be in a position to have fun or feel uplifted now, you're going to have to be lined up with your higher self. You're going to have to be actually identified with and as your higher self, because there's no way that the ego can pull off any joy on this plane. There is no way. The ego is a spacesuit. The ego is a vehicle, and we, if we're not careful, can be charged with grand theft auto. That means that we can try to usurp what the creator has created for its own use and direct it to our own use. I want this, I want that, I need this, and I need that. And really, the only thing that's happening with that is you're describing your insufficiencies. But as the image and likeness of God, there is no insufficiency. There is no insufficiency. So you must identify with the part of you that is already whole, perfect, and complete. And stop identifying as this vehicle that needs constant attention. It needs too many things. And so needing, of course, takes you away from being. And that will never yield feeling uplifted now.
That is so amazing. Needing will take you away from being. These are awesome tips. And again, Dr. Aziz, thank you so much for being with us, for saying yes at the last minute. And just, it was like so present for me. I was telling someone, I was joking, I was like, my ego wants to keep her to myself, but my spirit's like, please bring her on board. She gets to share her magic. So thank you so much for making the time, for making it happen. And we're going to post the links that you mentioned in the comments. Guys, thank you so much for being live with us. It has been amazing so far. We have another interview at 6, another one at 7, and I can't wait to continue creating nonstop magic with you all. All right, guys.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for your work. And thank you for your precious being. I love you.
I love you too. All right. Bye, guys. Bye, Dr. Aziz.